Mark Dannels loves his job. It gets him up at 4 every morning, including this one, the Veterans Day national holiday. A 34-year law enforcement veteran, Dannels was elected Cochise County Sheriff in 2012 and re-elected in 2016. Voted Western State's Sheriff of the Year, he is, amongst a long list of other things, President of the Arizona Sheriff's Association, awarded the Medal of Valor, the only sheriff to be sworn in to the Homeland Security Advisory Board, and he holds a master's degree in criminal justice management from Aspen University. In our interview in his office in Bisbee this morning, this Veterans Day, Dannels and I touched on such current topics as the spate of active shooter incidences, the county's new $20 million ubiquitous communication system, and the so-called caravan and the border, which he says is in its best shape in 30 years. My interview with Cochise County's enthused Sheriff Mark Dannels right after these messages.
I moved here a year ago and discovered Pace Avenue, and it's been a love experience ever since. And it's a great to-go for when you don't feel like cooking Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday evenings. And Ginger does an excellent variety, nice preparation, and nice quantity, a fair quantity for the price, I would say. I love all of Ginger's creations, and some of my favorite are the pot roast, which is fabulous, and the chicken chili, green chili enchiladas are to die for. And just of the salmon, you know, you get a variety. It's great, healthy food, very tasty, plentiful, and reasonably priced. What more could you ask for? You easy drive up and parking, and it's there, and pick it up and you go. Enjoy.
First of all, thank you so very much for having me here again.
It's been a while, Chuck. It's been a while.
It has, and being invited back doubles the honor.
Well, I think, you know, first of all, I tell people this all the time, and I think I need to say it to you too, is there's nothing special about me. What's special is the office I hold as sheriff.
Yes.
And I'm very humbled, blessed, and honored to serve the people in Cochise County. And that's who I work for. Got 131,000 bosses out there. That's a challenge. But I tell you, it's a challenge that I love going to work every day. Because if I can bring some relief or solutions, or solve a problem for somebody, or just give them that confidence that their sheriff's office is out there for them, I've done my job.
You know, I spoke with you months after you first took office.
You did.
In the summertime of 12, I think.
12, 13.
And I asked you what we learned from the Monument Fire, which hadn't been that long ago.
Right.
And you said, I'll paraphrase, we learned a great deal about our need for interoperability in our communication system. In fact, you said, as a matter of fact, I just picked up a check for $6 million. And that stunned me a bit. I didn't really ask a bunch of questions about it because it just seemed so unusual, and I called you the next day to ask you more about it. And now, and that was a down payment from the Buffett Foundation.
Yes.
Now this system is in place.
It is.
So tell us a little bit about that system, and tell us how we are better off today, not only in a period of crisis, but every day.
You know, one thing over my 3 decades of law enforcement in Cochise County, one thing that's always been a challenge is communication. The ability to talk with other agencies, other public safety agencies, to include each other. And even today, with the $20 million upgrade that we've been able to provide, thanks to the Buffett Foundation, thanks to Governor Ducey, we put this regional communication center in place. And what we have currently is a center that is regionalized. We're a rural county. And duplicating resources, where Bisbee has their own communication center, Cochise City has their own communication, Sheriff's Office has its own communication center, but nobody's talking. And so to bring that together in a rural county to me is it's efficient, it's effective, and it fits a mission for the people. An expectation, hey, say, why are we not regionalize this for the best of all? Because, and I'll give you an example, and I think we might have shared this back 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago, was that if there's an accident on South Highway 92 in Hereford, the call comes into the sheriff's office, we call service the police department to get an ambulance, then we call DPS. The probability of error is huge. Why somebody's dealing with minutes if it's a critical collision where somebody's life's at danger. So we want to make sure that this regional center gets to the people. It's a multi-badge, one-mission approach. We want the quickest badge to get there, the quickest medical to get there. I don't care about jurisdictions. Most of the chiefs in this county are the same as me. Let's just go help people, whether it be a fire chief or a police chief or a sheriff. And it's working well. It's working well. It's something that long after I'm done being sheriff, that center will continue to grow. Mm. And has it been difficult because you're switching personnel around? Has there been some challenges? Yes. But I've said this before, and I'll say it to your viewers too. The center's not about me. It's nothing. The center's so much bigger than me. This is a center that takes care of the 131,000 people and all our guests that visit us. And that's what's most important about this center. I'm pretty excited.
And you're going to leave something behind when that time comes that's functional and doesn't need you to be around to function.
That's right. That's exactly right. And it's something that's overdue. Mm-hmm. And if we can regionalize more in the future, I truly believe we should. Because the people, the citizens of this county expect that. They do. Mm-hmm. How can we do a job that's more efficient and more effective?
Mm-hmm. As a human being, much less a sheriff, person in law enforcement, you must feel the pain we all feel with these active shooter situations, these mass killings, even if it's not mass. But that makes it that much worse. I think just recently, didn't you have an exercise of some sort, a training exercise centered around that whole subject? What can you, I guess the question that is asked most often, is this the new normal for us? Do you think, we've touched on this before because this has been a problem for some time, and I think you see some weaknesses in the culture that allow this to happen. But are fooling around with the gun laws, is that any kind of a part of a solution? Talk to me about your feelings about this and how prepared we are in the event something like this happens here.
Well, I refuse to make it a normal. I mean, I'm realistic to the point I understand it's real. But I still say it's an abnormal in our country. I boil this down to cultural failures. I truly do. We can talk about guns all day, but I truly look at this as what has changed over the last 20, 30 years and beyond. And I go back to institutions, the institution of family, the institution of faith, the institution of education, and not saying teachers aren't teachers, or not saying that our ministerial folks in the faith world have changed. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is people aren't going to church as families. Families have a 50% divorce rate in this country compared to 20, 30 years ago. And then you look at our educational system. Look at Arizona. We're 49th. You know, people ask me all the time, Sheriff, you know, you always talk about who do we look up in our communities? Who do we look up for in law enforcement? And I'll tell you, teachers are heroes to me. They really, this is my 22nd year of coaching kids. And so I work around a lot of teachers. I have my teaching certificate. And I go into the schools and I teach at Cochise College and Wayland Baptist University. That's paying that forward with all my blessings, and I'm paying that back forward. But that's a tough job. It's a tough job in today's society to teach. So you look at those three, and go back to the point, you look at those three institutions, family, faith, and education. They've eroded. They truly, which is an erosion of our culture, that American culture that we have. And we have to get back to that. We have to get back to that, where people think it's okay to walk into a public venue, a school, a library, a social center like a dance club, and shoot it up. And we think that's okay. I refuse to say that's a norm. That is an abnorm that we as society needs to get back.
I don't know anyone that thinks it's okay.
I'm not saying that. What I'm talking about is a normal.
But what I do notice is that the same day something like that happens, you could talk to 5 people on the telephone, and the subject will never come up.
True.
And that is an indication of some form of normalcy in our minds, at any rate. That we're not as shocked as we were when Columbine happened. And so I don't think anybody accepts it. Maybe it's something that we don't even want to think about.
Well, I would agree with that too. And, we got to look. You can look at Washington, D.C., you can look at our governors, or you can look straight back into communities. And that's where I believe this starts, in our communities. And as an elected sheriff by communities, as police chiefs around this county and beyond, and sheriffs beyond, we got to get a hold of our communities. We truly do. And in Cochise, I'll speak directly to Cochise County. Since February of 2015, we have trained, I think we're coming up to 13,000 students, community leaders, community officials, kids, students in Cochise County. We're preparing them for not the ifs, but when it happens, this is how we respond. And I'll tell you, there's no better report card than the Coronado shooting.
Well, they're being taught to fight back, aren't they?
Yes. Yes. Don't quail up in a corner where you become a victim. No, take charge of the situation. Now, that's tough to teach you when you got kindergartners, first graders, all the way up to high school. But we teach it all. We do. And it's worked well. The best report card is Coronado Elementary School about a year and a half ago, where they sad to have the 13-year-old boy that went and took a gun to school and ended up shooting himself in the bathroom. And very, very sad. My heart still goes out to that family. But the response by public safety, fire, police, EMS, sheriff, was outstanding. The response by the teachers, by the leadership of that school, Coronado, and by the students was just how we planned. We couldn't have put a better plan together in a time of crisis, and that shows it's working. Now, we just did a scenario here a couple weeks ago. This was another scenario to work out some bugs, but I'll be honest with you. Again, we are learning here in Cochise County, but the biggest thing to me when it comes to the quality of life in communities comes through trust of your law enforcement. It really is. I own that slice of that pie, and I'll speak on that. And that's why I spend so much time in our communities. I have a team that goes out and enforces the rules, but under a culture that quality of work, quality of service. But I spend a lot of time, whether it be walking the Veterans Parade like the other day, with our sign that we honor our veterans, whether it be talking to kids at the Student Council of Buena High School, or our 5 JTED programs around the high schools in Cochise County, whatever it may be. We're putting that extra effort forward because today's law enforcement is no longer an enforcement branch. It's a community branch. And I believe in that. And you look at groups, one of the classes I teach at Wayne Baptist University is the Deviance class. You look at Ferguson, Missouri, several years ago. People ask, they talk about Ferguson as a start line to all this scrutiny on law enforcement. But I'll tell you, it started in Ferguson, and it started that community did not trust law enforcement, and law enforcement did not trust the community. If you ever go back and read the briefs on that, I blame the mayor, the city manager, and the police chief. That was a city that was policing for profit, which is never in our business. We should never police for profit. But number two, more important, is the fact that that was a 90% Caucasian police department servicing a 90% African American city. So obviously there was no balance. There was no community touch. And so when that broke out, it just exploded. That was a time bomb.
It was pent up.
It was pent up energy, negative energy that rolled into the streets. Should never happen. And I blame the city leadership on that. I really do. If it happens in Cochise County, you blame me.
It must have been, there were 13 people, including the shooter who died. And one, which must have really struck home, was a 29-year veteran of the Sheriff's Department.
Right.
And the training instructs responders to chase the sound of that gun
It does.
What goes through, if anything, through a responder's mind, especially if they're the first one there with no immediate backup? What does that person shift into a mode of not thinking at all, just reacting, or are they thinking? Are they afraid? You would know the answer to that question.
Well, being in previous shootings, my last one in 2010, we're human. There's no doubt about it. There's always that fear. But I'll tell you something. My last shooting in 2010, where a guy shot his wife going through a domestic scenario, and threw her body on a highway, and then I ended up finding the guy and getting a shootout with the guy. And that wasn't my first shooting. So long story short is, the machine kicks in. And I know it sounds really weird to say it that way, but the machine kicks in, which means your training kicks in. You have to stop that threat. And you're not thinking about, let me shoot him in the ankle, let me shoot him in the hand, let me shoot the gun out of his hand, the stuff you see on Hollywood. No, you stop that threat, and whatever it takes. Because if you can't stop the threat, then you're no good to protect your community.
You shoot to kill.
You shoot to kill. We shoot to neutralize. And if that means somebody dies, somebody dies. And I know it sounds bad, but the reality is this. If somebody will shoot an innocent person or shoot a cop, we have to stop that threat. We truly do. And the new training is we go at that threat. Instead of waiting for backup, we go at them. And in a rural kind like ours, we don't have choices like that. We go. Mm-hmm. And so it is. It's no cop wants to be involved in a shooting. I can tell you right now, I never want to be involved in a shooting. But we train to protect ourselves and protect others. And good cops, which I'm very impressed with the men and women in my sheriff's office, will just do that. They will get in there and protect others and sacrifice their own selves.
So maybe it is a phase we're going through.
I hope.
That can be corrected. I don't see it happening anytime soon. And I worry about our community.
I worry about our community, but I'll tell you, we worry about it every day. I worry about two things. One, the protection of my men and women that serve the oath of office and the mission at the sheriff's office. I worry about it every day. Just sent an email today on Veterans Day here, thanking all our former military and those still serving in the reserve or National Guard status. And at the end of it says thank you and please be safe. I always remember, please be safe out there. That's the worst call any sheriff or any police chief could ever get, because these are community folks serving a community, just like I do. So it is. It's very scary. It's very scary. I also worry about our innocent kids and youth and our citizens that are out there doing the right thing in the community, which are 95% of the people who live in this county, and that they're not a victim of some evil.
Let's talk about the thing that keeps you awake at night, and that's the border. You've said that to me and others many times. You lose sleep over that border. The caravan. Now, it hasn't been lost on many that we haven't heard the word caravan since Tuesday, November 6th. And so my question to you, and I know how patriotic and loyal you are to our leaders, but it seemed to me and to many that this was, I don't want to say trumped up for a political campaign, but it felt that way, and I think that by virtue of the fact that there hasn't been anything said about it since, is this caravan concern of yours, and don't people have a right to come here and apply for asylum? Was that overblown? Has it been overblown? Is it a problem?
Well, I have the privilege, a couple thoughts on that. As a sheriff that has 83 miles of international border, that border brings an element of public safety that, where I grew up in Illinois, don't even think about. Mm-hmm. I mean, border, what's a border? That's an Arizona issue or a Texas issue or New Mexico, and California too. So we don't think of it that way back in the Midwest where I grew up. Here I think of it as a sheriff because it brings an element of crime that I have to address. And I don't sit on the border. It's not my job. That's the federal government's job. But once they step onto private property, a couple feet north of the border, they become an element of concern for me. You're right. You made a comment about, supporting our national leaders. And I have, since My 34 years in the business, I do that because I believe governments should work together. And we can't point fingers at each other because nothing gets done. Right. That's at the local level, our governor, our national leaders, congressional folks, the president. Whether I agree or disagree with them, the bottom line is there's a certain aspect I have a working responsibility, and that's under the executive branch of public safety. Going back to your question on the caravan, I had the privilege of sitting on the Department of Homeland Security Advisory Council where I get briefs.
You're sworn in to that.
Sworn into that. So I get some briefs of sitting down with talking to Secretary Nielsen and people from the White House. So there's a concern. The fact is, and it's supported through the media, where you see the groups coming. I mean, they're unless that's a fake picture, I don't think so. There are groups coming this way. What they're not talking about is what we're seeing. Hidalgo County, for example. I was just talking the other day to an agent. They get 200 illegals every other day coming through Hidalgo County, which is our neighboring county to the east. We got the flux here. This is the worst it's been in 8 years in Cochise County when it comes to human smuggling. Not drug smuggling, human smuggling. And also those coming to the border and jumping fences. It's a concern to me, and I'll tell you why. I take an oath of office along with the other almost 300 folks that serve the mission of the Sheriff's Office to support the Constitution of the United States and the laws of Arizona. So again, I don't make laws. I don't judge laws. I enforce laws. And so do the men and women that serve in this mission. So when somebody breaks the law in this county, and I have citizens that call me and say, Sheriff, I'm concerned, I have to be concerned. And together we unify for the best practice at that point. And so what's going to happen, I don't know. I don't know.
Do you have any intel that would suggest that there are some very, very bad people in that caravan? It doesn't seem likely to me that those kinds of people travel that way.
Well, from what I understand, and this is something people don't understand. And this is the stuff you don't see on TV every day. And but I was told 30% of all the females that are coming across the border, coming up, are victimized by the cartels and the coyotes, the bandits, by being raped. The young girls are carrying birth control pills just so they don't get pregnant. Now, this is a subject of modern-day slavery, violent acts. When the cartels or the criminal transnational organizations got their hands on the smuggling, there's nothing good about that. There's nothing good about that. We took a complaint 2 weeks ago of an 18-year-old in a stash house, not a safe house, but a stash house set up by the cartels that was raped. Now, that's very rare because most of them are afraid to report that. And we took the investigation on that. So again, 70% of the males have been victimized on these trips coming north. Mm-hmm. And then you look at 70%, I think it was 70%, don't quote me on this one, but I think it was 70% of all the people in these groups have been victimized one way or another. Mm-hmm. Maybe not through sexual, but some kind of being a victim of a crime. So these aren't just groups that are parading up here that, are being fed and taken care of, and their health and welfare are the number one concern of the cartels. Just the opposite.
It's a tough business.
Yeah, for those trying to get where they want to go.
Right.
For the cartels, it's ruthless. It's truly ruthless. It's $6,000 a head to come in to be smuggled into this country right now, in this area. You get 3 attempts. If you do get here and you can't afford to pay it, which a lot of them can, of course, you can see that. They're indebted to these cartels in these communities throughout the United States. Stuff you don't see in the local media. Mm-hmm. And so it's a huge concern of mine because I take care of people. That's my job, to make sure their health and welfare are protected. And the fight is not with these caravans, the good people in these caravans that are trying to look for a better way of life. The fight is with the cartels that have control of these good people. What I say at the border is this: if you come to the border, whether this group's coming to this border, coming to Texas, going to Yuma, wherever they're going, and they're still, this comes on every day here on the southern border, is this, that follow the legal process. That's what I promote. Go to a port, claim your refugee status, claim your protection, whatever it may be, but do it legal. It's the only thing I ask.
The 14th Amendment, I understand that it was enacted primarily during the days of slavery, and for that reason. Mm-hmm. When a person comes here from another country, Are they under our jurisdiction or the country of origin?
Well, they're under the country of origin until we accept them. Once it's accepted under a legal process, then they're subject to our laws, our rules.
So a person who comes here and specifically to have a child and they're here illegally, well, they're not under our jurisdiction, it would seem to me, from what you're telling me.
Well,
but if they're not under our jurisdiction, how can we prosecute them?
Well, they are under our jurisdiction. Once you step foot on American soil, you're subject to our rules.
Understand that, but you're still under the jurisdiction of the country where you were born?
Well, your natural origin is, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But you're subject to our rules, our policies and regulations once you come into the U.S. Just like I visit another country. I might be a U.S. citizen, but I'm subject to follow their rules.
Is it? Would it be your position that the 14th Amendment does not apply to someone who's here illegally and gives birth to a child? And that child automatically becomes a citizen?
The person does become a citizen because they're born in our country.
But that's because of the 14th Amendment?
Yes, because they're on U.S. soil.
Okay. So there is no dispute then about the question of jurisdiction?
To me, it's not. Once
it's part of the language of 14.
Right, exactly. Once you step foot in our country based on a legal process or illegal, if you come across illegally, you've committed a crime coming across our border illegally. You jump a fence or you come, however you get in the United States, but you're still subject to our rules, our Constitution. Just like if I go to Mexico, and you've heard the stories where they go into Mexico and they violate a law, and you got to follow their rules. It's their country, and I think we need to respect that. I'm a big believer, and it's probably because I've been doing it for 34 years, is that, there's consequences for breaking rules in this country. And the Constitution says that we will have a secure border. And there are processes to come into our country. I was watching a thing last week where they had a group that became U.S. citizens, and they're holding the American flag. But they did it the right way. And that's all I ask. That's all I ask. Mm-hmm. And as a humanitarian, somebody that cares about people, just do it the right way. Mm-hmm. Come to the port, make your declaration. If it fits within the rules, there's a process. But you can't jump a fence right into our country and then say, hey, that's not the way you do it. I'm sorry, it's not the way you do it. And that's why we need Border Patrol. That's why we need community law enforcement. If that was the case, if everybody followed the rules, we wouldn't have a need for law enforcement.
Do you share the President's position that the 14th Amendment should be abolished? It would appear to be headed to the courts for clarification, and the President would like to just sign a document that ends it, and that doesn't seem likely to be legal.
Well, yeah, because that's ratified through your Congress, number one. He's got executive power, and I don't want to stretch too far out of the lane of my expertise either. But to me, that seems like, I think it's 2/3 of Congress has to change the Constitution. And I could be wrong on the 2/3, so folks don't get mad if I said that wrong. But that's my understanding. Just like in Arizona, our congressional folks at the state level, if we want to change the Constitution, it takes 2/3. And I think it's Congress or even a vote, again, to do that. So I think we need to preserve our Constitution. And I've had people debate with me on that, saying that our Constitution is outdated. I would disagree with them. And if we do change it, we need the people to change it.
It's an amazing document.
It's an amazing document that was written beyond years. And I'm very impressed with it. And I'm harmonious to, let's see, we can find a solution in the middle. But when you start saying the Constitution is outdated, I'm going to argue with you. I'm going to debate with you, because I think our Constitution is an amazing document that was written and authored by people that had a vision better than you and I sitting here today. And if we can learn, I said this before while we're just in general talking before this interview, if we can take the history and learn from it, we'll be a better nation. We really will. We'll be a better nation. But I do think, going back to our border, I do think we need to have a border that's perceived and is real to be a strong, secure border that has order. Order on the border, I call it. I truly believe that. If we don't have, as majority countries in this world have, why should the U.S. be any different? And the Constitution says we'll have a secure border. That's a mandate. It's not discretionary in there. And I take an oath to support that Constitution. So I always go back when people want to debate things with me and say, listen, the Constitution says it. Well, it's outdated. Okay, can't go there. Can't go there with you. I'm telling you, we got to have a secure border, and we have to have consequences for rules that we break in this country. We do. And that's why we have prisons. That's why we have jails. That's why we have a punitive system built within the criminal justice system. The day we give that up, today I think we're in really trouble in this country.
I find all these things that we've just talked about interesting, and
So
I appreciate your point of view and guidance in some cases. And to wrap this up, this is Veterans Day 2018. I know that means a lot to you.
It does.
And so tell our viewers what it does mean to you, Veterans Day.
You know, it's Veterans Day. We can never forget why you and I can sit here and have an interview. And I can give you an opinion. You can give me your opinion. And we have a right in this country to disagree. We should agree to disagree. And not take it so personal, by the way, by some, especially our national congressional folks that everybody's pointing fingers. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. You have an expectation to lead our country and help communities succeed. I wish they'd all read a book on that every morning before they go to work. But it means a lot to us because we're allowed our freedoms and our liberties. And people forget that. People forget that. I served in the Army. My two brothers served in the military, one Navy, one Air Force. And my dad was Air Force. I was stationed right here at Fort Huachuca before I started law enforcement. And people paid the ultimate price to be this great nation that we are. People say we're divided. Oh, I would agree. There's a lot of division in this country. But if we actually get back right down to it, it's still the best nation in the world. And I think we can never forget that. So, and I sent an email to my staff this morning, my 300 folks, and said, please, thanking to all my former veterans out there that are now serving the Sheriff's Department mission, though Reserve and National Guard folks still serving here, thanking them and their families. But also, I said, please reach out and thank the vets today on this special day. And this morning, I'll give you a little story. This morning I was coming down to work here about 6:37 this morning coming in. I work holidays. I think it's special that I get to come out here. We don't shut down. We're 24/7 operation. Jail, dispatchers, excuse me, and my deputies. If they're going to be working, so am I. I believe in that. I'm going to be there, you know. Well, this morning I was coming down. There's a convoy, a military convoy, heading to the border. So I waved them over. And they're like looking like, what's going on? And I got out, and the young stellar.
You can do that.
Yeah, I pulled along the first one they can pull, and they pulled over right here in Bisbee. And I got out, and the staff sergeant got out, young stellar guy got out, walked up to me, and, can I help you? I said, yeah, I'm the sheriff, and I introduced myself. And I said, do you mind if I take a moment, if you got the time, to let me thank every one of your soldiers here today, and let them know that we appreciate what they do in keeping this great nation safe, number one. But number two, you know, there's a lot of innuendos, a lot of suspicion. You know, they're on the border. And I've been doing a lot of interviews on that. And I said, just let them know we trust them. Let them know we trust them. We trust them to go overseas and protect their countries, protect our country. But now we send them to the border, there's suspicion. Oh, no, the military's there. Whether you like it or not, their job is to protect and keep America safe. So I thanked every one of them this morning and talked to them.
Do we take good enough care of our veterans, especially ones that are so adversely affected by their tour of duty?
This is a personal opinion on my part. No. These folks have served their country. And like I just described, we need to do everything possible for these people, especially the ones that have seen combat. You know, been overseas and endured stuff that you and I will never see. I mean, I keep our community safe and protect them. I get that. They have a grand mission, bigger than mine, when it comes to serving the world's needs. We need to take care of them. I mean, you saw the vet scams. You know, these people need help. My oldest brother served 31 years in the Navy. He's got a lot of medical issues as a result of it. And one thing he told me just the other day, and I'll just share what he said, that he finally got to care. President Trump did something with the VA system. I don't know all the details, but did open up some avenues for our vets, and he's being taken care of now. So we have to take care of our vets. They've taken care of us. Why are we not taking care of them? We can never forget that. I don't mind paying more taxes for that. I'll be honest with you. Nobody likes paying taxes. But if we don't take care of our vets that have taken care of this country, allow you and I to speak freely like we are today, someday that might not be the case.
Well, it just seems absurd that veterans in need of medical help fall through the cracks.
It drives me. I just don't know how anybody at a national level says that's okay. I don't.
Or doesn't notice it or allows it to happen.
Good point. Where they just, oh, what's going on? That is your job. That's like me. If I had, within my authority as a sheriff was to take care of vets, I'd be all over it. I'd be all over it. Because you have to direct. If you're not thinking about it, you're failing too. I mean, and every congressional leader needs to check themselves and say, have I done enough for our vets? And I'm not calling them out. Well, let me just say, yeah, I am calling them out. And the fact that, ask yourself, have you done enough for our vets? Past, current, and future.
It's something that you just are compelled to stand up for.
Yes.
And thank you for this again.
Thank you, Chuck, for having me. And I got to say something, if you let me say one last thing.
Absolutely.
One last thing I think is very important, and I've been pushing this message. You know, we've been collaborating. Again, I've worked 34 years in this county. And the best the border's been is currently as we sit, you and I, based on the efforts of the community, based on local law enforcement, the men and women of the sheriff's office, our governor, who's took an interest in helping us. We've added 8 deputies as a result of him, and we have assistants. His people have assigned to the sheriff's office here. We have 8 National Guard folks assigned to the sheriff's office that are monitoring cameras for us, and our collaborative efforts with our federal partners. This is the best it's been. I mean, our drug seizures have gone down. I think our last notable drug seizure, or even drugs coming through, is February of this year. You know, and you hear all this about, well, Cochise County, this, and that. We need to all rise up and say, awesome job to the men and women that wear a badge in this county at all levels, state, local, and federal, because they've done that piece of the pie. We're all coming together. This is a great place to live. And I want to make sure that's heard. It's a great place to live, no matter what is perceived or what the naysayers want to say.
Yeah, where are you going to go?
Yeah. This is my home.
Yeah.
And this will be my retirement home. And I have a personal stake, let alone being the sheriff and serving the folks here, but a personal stake is I want my home to be the best it can be. And I'm proud of where we're at with it. And we're going to continue sustaining and driving and being innovative and making sure this gets better. But it takes good leadership at all levels, and it takes good, put the egos aside. Put the egos aside. And do we need reform when it comes to immigration? Something that I don't have authority under. I do drug smuggling, but I don't when it comes to immigration. But do we need reform, immigration reform in this country? You go all the way back to Reagan, President Reagan. Nobody has fixed it. Congressional folks, where are they at with this? We need everybody to come together, get to the table, take your pride, your egos, even your opinions off the table, and let's fix it for the right reasons.
It occurs to me, especially given the sway of the political landscape, that there will not be, quote unquote, a wall on our border. Everyone promises it, gets elected, but somehow or another it doesn't happen, and it doesn't really look like it's going to happen now, does it?
I don't know. It doesn't. You know, and I'll give you an example of the wall. I was in D.C. here several months ago, and one of the designers of one of the walls was there, and he was talking to me about, yeah, we're going to build this great wall. He said, I'm going to come see you, Sheriff. Well, you can come see me, but let's look at the true constituents of his. That is the people who live here, the rural folks. So he met with them, and they did not like his protocol. They didn't like it at all. In fact, it would have, you talk about water, it would have drained every water, have enough cement to put a wall up like he wanted. Like I said, I don't want to detract from, I believe in border security, but we got to be smart about that, because every community, every county has a different perspective on that based on what their geography looks like, what their needs are. I mean, what's going on. Some have water, some have desert, some have mountains. We have a little bit of everything here. But the wall's not the fix-all. It's a very small slice of the issue. It takes technology, people, infrastructure, technology. Everything's got to be put at the table to fix border security. It's not one piece of the pie. Wall's not the answer.
You've described a border currently that doesn't seem like it necessitated putting 5,000 troops on the border. Was that a good move? Was that a necessary move?
You know, here this is an opinion from Mark, and we have a motto at the Sheriff's Department: we're all entitled to our own opinion, but we're not entitled to our own facts. And I remind people of that. But in my observation, based on my experience, the reason you got a caravan marching their way in here, the reason we're having the issue of a large increase in human smuggling on our border, is the fact that it's perceived as weak. We have to send a message that we have a secure, orderly border that we can defend. If not, we're vulnerable, not just for those looking for a better way of life, or those come up here to commit crimes, or those terrorists that come up here to want to harm America. 9/11 should never be forgotten. And it seems like we forget that as every year goes by. It gets less and less important to us. We forget that we're in trouble in this country. I won't forget it. We lost a lot of Americans in that tragedy, and it was senseless. It was senseless in the fact that, could have been avoided. I don't know. I'm not that good of an expert on that, but I can tell you this much: we can never let the lessons go. The history of that. We need a secure border, because if it happens again, all we're doing is repeating a mistake. We can't let that happen.
Well, on this auspicious day, Veterans Day 2018, I thank you for all of your service, and particularly to our community. And I hope that we'll do this again one day and not wait quite so long.
Me too. Thank you, Chuck, for having me, and thanks for doing this.
Voted the top 3 in 5 categories by readers of the Herald Review, the BTC is your one-stop fun spot. You love our tours. You wear our clothing. You zip around town on our electric bikes. You rest comfortably in our rooms. You hitch free rides, order takeout, and we deliver. The BTC Lofts Tours and Accommodations, the fastest growing attraction in Southern Arizona. You voted BTC Best of Bisbee, and we say,
thank you!